Hello, I'm Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions. Thank you for your time. I'm continuing with the series, Starting Nonprofits. It's a step-by-step series where I walk you through the different components of completing the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. We are on step 15, which is its own category almost in the Form 1023 application because it's divided into different parts. Again, this is the Form 1023 application, and we are now on part number 6, which is the financial data report. So again, this is a series that I started to walk you through the steps of starting nonprofits. There are 20 total steps. We are on step number 15, which is divided into several parts because step 15 is actually the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption itself. We are on part 6, which is the financial data. So let's do it. So this is step 15, part 6, complete the Form 1023. The Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is the official application used to apply for 501c3 status from the IRS. The Form 1023 is the long version of the application that requires the completion of all of the documents, which are called supplemental responses, you've learned to complete thus far. The Form 1023 includes 10 parts and 8 schedules. It allows you to really explain the community services you plan to provide through a 501c3 nonprofit. So again, we're talking about the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. It has 10 parts, and we are now on part number 6. We've already discussed parts 1 through 5. So part 6 is the financial data. And like I mentioned before, we are on the financial data part 6 of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. So after we finish part 6, we have part 7, which is foundational classification, part 8, effective date, part 9, annual filing requirements, and part 10, signature and upload checklist. The Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption also includes schedules, but schedules are only used on a per needed basis. Most of the time, applications don't require you to complete the different schedules. However, you can look at the list of schedules here and the purposes to determine whether or not you would need to complete a schedule to go along with your Form 1023 application. For example, if you are starting a church, then you will have to complete Schedule A, and the schedules are included in the Form 1023 application. You just choose the schedule that's relevant to what you're doing. If you're starting a school, Schedule B. If you are planning to provide any type of scholarships or loans or grants, then you would do a Schedule H. A little bit about me. Again, I'm Susan Woods. I started a 501c3 nonprofit organization in 2006 officially. I actually started it in 2003, but when I saw that people were very reluctant to invest in a nonprofit organization without the 501c3 status, I earned my 501c3 status in 2006. I offered 2 programs underneath the nonprofit over a 10-year period. I've earned 3 nonprofit management certificates, 1 from Duke University, 1 from Wake Forest University, and 1 from Winthrop University. I'm also a 3-time graduate of Winthrop University. I earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, a Master of Arts in Teaching Business Education, and a Master of Business Administration degree. I teach in-person classes and I also offer online classes. I complete the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption for clients across the United States. I've been doing so since 2010, and thus far I've completed 178 applications, and I have a 100% approval rating from the IRS. You can learn more about me at my website at www.trustsusanwoods.com. So, are you ready to start a 501c3? If you are, I encourage you to reserve a 1 hour phone consultation on my website. If you go to trustsusanwoods.com and click on the reserve consultation link, it will take you to my schedule and you can easily reserve a 1 hour phone consultation with me. I'll be glad to talk with you about your 501c3 vision. So let's get started with the demonstration. I'd like to show you how you would go into the pay.gov account and complete the Form 1023 application. And of course, we are working on part number 6, the financial data. So just one moment as I pause my screen so that I can get to the place in the pay.gov account where we need to look. Just one moment, please. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Almost ready to share again. Okay, thank you again for your patience. I'm now sharing the Excel spreadsheet, and that's where I meant to go before going to the pay.gov account. When you do your financial data report, I highly recommend, this is not mandatory, but I highly recommend creating a separate Excel spreadsheet that includes the components of the financial data report from the pay.gov account. And the reason that I say that is because it allows you to practice. It allows you to tweak and revise and update your data before you put it in the actual account, pay.gov account. Let me explain what I'm saying. This is a sample financial data report that I did for a client. And this is the way I laid it out. The information in here on each row and each column matches what's in the pay.gov account, as you will see in just a few moments. So we have the statement of revenues and expenses, because that's what this financial data report is about, the statement of revenue and expenses. And then you have the current tax year and 2 succeeding tax years. So you have to worry about 3 tax years. And then you have the type of revenue or expense. And then you have all of the rows here. This is actually row 1, but the data is data, the first point of data. So it's row 5, but point of data 1. Anyway, we'll see in just a moment what I'm talking about. And some examples of revenues, you have to account for gifts, grants, and contributions, and then service fees and gross investment income. All of these are revenue. And then you would total them up, total of lines 1 through 7. Then you add line row 9 and so on and so forth. I'm not going to get into all of the weeds of the financial data report, but I just want to show you. Then you have your expenses section. I always start in the expenses section. When you do your brainstorming, like we've already talked about before, when we talked about budgets, remember, I encourage you to do brainstorming and write down everything that you would need to offer your services. We're going to grab that information and put it into our financial data report. And I always start with expenses because normally you know what expenses you're going to have to incur. So all of these are examples of expenses that I put into this form for my client. And then you have the total. Now, as far as revenue, you really don't know where your revenue are going to come from, where your revenue will come from. So You have to kind of project, really. You have to project your revenues based on the personalities, if you will, of your group. Do you have people who are extroverts who will feel comfortable going out and requesting donations from people directly? Do you have good grant writers? That's how you determine whether or not or how you're going to generate your revenue based on your personalities. And also, in this case, my client is going to charge fees for their services. So we included fees for the services that she's going to provide. And then another thing, she's going to have a line item called net unrelated business income because she's going to sell classes. So whenever you do things that are not directly related to the services that you're providing, and they are indirectly related to the service that you're going to provide, that's determined. That's called net unrelated business income. It's unrelated to the services that she's providing, but yet it's going to generate income for her. So, one thing I want to also point out is there is a column called budget narrative. Now, the budget narrative is not in the financial data in the pay.gov account, but this is something that I added because I wanted to provide some narrative information for the exemption specialist assigned to process the application in case they had questions about specifically where the money is going to come from and how expenses are incurred. So, um, in this example, the total revenue that I've projected is $276,000, and that matches the total expenses that I projected. One last thing before I move from this Excel spreadsheet is, again, we have to project, guess, okay, do our best estimate for the current tax year and the two succeeding tax years. And so to make that easy for me and fair across the board, I always use a 0.05 increase across the board for everything to project the next two succeeding years. So in 2022, I'm projecting that we will have a 0.05% increase for the gifts, grants, and contributions received. And then for 2023, I'm projecting the same amount, 0.05% in 2023 from 2022. So, and then I create formulas. Here's the formula up here that I created to use for all of these succeeding years, again, across the board for revenue and expenses. Okay, so now enough of that, right? So now I'm going to pause my screen again so that I can now go to the actual application, pay.gov application. Again, I like to demonstrate. I like to show what I'm talking about so that you can see where I'm going when I'm explaining different things. Okay, so now I am showing the clients, the same client, pay.gov account. Okay, so once you've created your spreadsheet, and once again, the spreadsheet is absolutely optional, but it just helps, especially since you have your formulas already in the spreadsheet. If you go in and say, oh my goodness, I forgot to put this in, you can go in and put it in and your figures will automatically calculate for you. Versus if you say, well, I'm just going to come and put in my information in one place, then you have to put it in here. And this again is the part 6. It's the application for recognition of exemption under 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. Part 6, financial data. That's what we're talking about right now, the financial data, right? So, if you choose to come here and just put your figures in and without any type of source like the Excel spreadsheet, that's your prerogative. But for me, it's just much easier having that source available for me to just now plug in the information from this Excel spreadsheet. So you start here and it says the question number 1 says, select the option that best describes you to determine the years of revenues and expenses you need to provide. And anytime you don't understand what a question means in the pay.gov account, just click on the question mark. Select the option that best describes you to determine the years of revenues and expenses you need to provide. Well, it didn't really elaborate on that, did it? So if you've completed less than one tax year, so if you just started, then you will click on this radio button. So it says, if you've existed for less than 1 year, provide projections of your likely income and expenses for your current year and projections of your likely income and expenses for the next 2 years based on a reasonable and good faith estimate of your future finances for a total of 3 years of financial information. Place financial information for the year you're filing this application in the column marked current tax year. So that's what we're going to do. Now, these other two options you can read on your own, but this is going to be for a person who's just getting started. So if I'm scrolling down, and this is the same thing that was in the spreadsheet. Like I said, it's so beneficial to me to create the spreadsheet first, go in and tweak all of my figures to make sure that I'm satisfied with them, and then plug them in here. It's so simple. Just type them in. Now, as you notice, the column for the budget narrative is not here because, like I said, I added that information in the spreadsheet so that the exemption specialist can see how I came about the figures that I entered into this financial data report or financial data. Now, I also include the spreadsheet, by the way. The spreadsheet becomes one part of the application so that they can refer back to it. So again, all you do, since if you do a spreadsheet, all you will need to do now is go in and just add the information. So simple. Remember the $276,000 figure, total revenue. There it is. And the verbiage is the same, pretty much. So again, it just helps you. $276,000. And I try to match it up because you never want to submit a financial data report without either breaking even or having the revenues exceed expenses. When I submitted my financial data report years ago, when I applied for 501c3 status, I had my expenses exceeding my revenue. And of course, the exemption specialist sent a letter saying, how can that be? Are you telling us you're starting in the red? So be sure that either you break even or your revenues exceed your expenses. One more thing with the financial data, part 6 of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is 25. Itemized financial data. Now, for some reason, the IRS wants you to tell them exactly what you put in lines 7, 9, 11, 12, 15, and 16. And once again, if you created an Excel spreadsheet to go along with the information that you provide here, then you can reference that, or you can just scroll back up and look at lines 7, what's in it? Nothing. What's the next one? I'm getting tongue tied. Line 9, nothing. Line 11, nothing. Line 12, nothing. Line 15, nothing. Line 16, nothing. So I put all of those lines as NA. There's nothing there. But then line 23 is another line that you have to itemize. And so line 23 includes any expense not otherwise classified, such as program services. And so I put that there. So you will have to, again, include this information for these lines in the application. And you might say, well, how do you know it was those particular lines? If I would have left this blank and tried to continue, then the system would have listed these lines as needed to have been included in this particular field. So that's it, everybody. That is it. Once you've completed this part 6 financial data report, all of the information, and then completed this last field, you will click on continue to go to part 7. Again, there are 10 parts to the there are 10 parts to the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. We are on part 6. We just completed part 6 of 10. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope this information is beneficial for you, and have a great day.